Hello, KAIST. Thank you for having us today. Thank you for having Hakyeon and Chetin and myself to speak with you today. A little bit about myself before we dive in. My name is Johnny Lee. I'm General Manager of Games, Entertainment, and Media here at the Solana Foundation. I come from both games and entertainment and have been a founder in both games and entertainment. In my 24-year career, the first 6 to 7 were as many people as M&A investment bankers. I started in software M&A and continued on consumer products M&A. I enjoyed the work, but I wasn't happy. And so I left and I started my own media and entertainment company in New York City, where I'm from and where I'm recording from today. And it was seed invested by Samsung Electronics. We concepted a film, entered pre-production, shot it, post-production. We were blessed enough that it got into Tribeca Film Festival, and we were lucky enough that it won the People's Choice Award that year, which catapulted us to global theatrical distribution. And some pretty cool marketing partnerships with ESPN, YouTube Live, Diesel Jeans, and then a very small exit sale to Sony Screen Gems, who made a Hollywood feature adaptation of our original film. That was about 13, 14 years ago, and that was about 7, 8 years of founder grind. And then the past 12, 13 years, I've been completely focused and dedicated to the games industry. I just returned home to New York City after 10 plus years living in Asia, focused on the games industry. I was based in Seoul for 5 years, running my own games consultancy, which focused on working with Nordic, Israeli, and Eastern European game companies into Asia, and then I expanded the games consultancy into mainland China about 6, 7 years ago, and so I lived in Shanghai for 5 years, focused on that as well, and then the games consultancy got taken over by Improbable, which is an A16Z SoftBank Vision Fund portco, and I led business development there. Improbable does games technology, games infra, multi-server cloud infrastructure for scalable and persistent open worlds. And then I was general manager of Dark Horse Games, Dark Horse Comics' games division, working with IP like Hellboy and Umbrella Academy and bringing them into the games industry and ultimately into Web3. I joined Solana about 18 months ago to grow and build the ecosystem, the games ecosystem. And when I joined, it really was at its infancy. It had probably less than a handful of games developing on Solana. Today, we have over 150 games developing on Solana, many of which are launching this year. About 60 or so are launching this year, and that was due to strategies we put in place about 18 months ago. So before I go into the play and own vision of our games ecosystem, I think it might be interesting for the KAIST audience to discuss and learn about some of the key strategic initiatives we put in place to grow a games ecosystem. The very first thing I did was when I joined in Q3 of 2021, it was height of the bull market, right? And I, on day one, instilled a playtest mandate, which in short means if a game developer was approaching us for commercial support, i.e. investment or marketing support, and we would require in return a playtest. Now, that doesn't sound as dramatic or innovative now, but we were literally the only blockchain protocol at the time to require a playable. And many VCs at the time, many well-renowned and top VCs at the time, weren't even conducting playtests or requiring playables. Now, internally and externally, there were a lot of discussions on if we were to do that, if it would be a good idea. I understood that it was the proper way to build the long-term value of our ecosystem, that the games needed to stand alone on their own, be fun first, player experience first games, and there was no way to be able to filter for that without playing them. So we and the company entrusted me enough to make this decision, so we did it fully expecting that we would take a near-term business hit, but grow the long-term value of our ecosystem properly. But what happened was even more interesting. Our near-term business nearly tripled, and it tripled very, very almost immediately. And when we spent some time thinking about it, what we figured out was that the experienced game developers that were entering the blockchain games industry for the right reasons, not for making a quick buck, not for play to earn tokenomics, that they were building a game first and using blockchain to add value to the player experience. Well, those game developers knew where to go, meaning they were not scared about play tests or playable requirements because they had focused there and they had focused their work and development there. And they knew sort of where we were on the value proposition as well, meaning that we were focusing on fun first, player experience first games. So that was a catalyst for us. And then secondly, we used our understanding of the history of the games industry to focus on key regions first. So if you know the history of the games industry, tech innovations and even business model innovations all start in North Asia, Korea in particular. Mobile as a games platform, free to play, and even innovations in core gameplay loop of AAA PC console games like Battle Royale with PUBG all started in Korea. And we saw blockchain as no different. And blockchain is a mix of tech and platform innovation, but at its core, it's also a business model innovation for the games industry. And so we were the first blockchain protocol to shift all of our focus in the games business to Asia. We established a Korea team over 18 months ago, and we are continuing to grow in this key region today. We use free-to-play's adoption and traction in the games industry as a playbook. If you, again, are a student of the industry, you will know and understand why. And how that adoption worked was North Asia first. They created the free-to-play business model. Then Southeast Asia and Nordics are a quick second follower. Then Eastern Europe, then Western Europe, then North America. North America is always the laggard on games-related tech and business model innovations. I would say the third key strategic understanding and initiative that we put in place was there was a need to ship games quickly because we want to find games, in particular blockchain games, with product market fit. We all think we know the potential of blockchain games, but there really hasn't been a game that's been sustainably successful. This is also why in our strategic vision we push back against play-to-earn games because we don't see any sustainability, and if you're there to earn, you're a DeFi product. The last key strategic initiative is we identified 3 general buckets that can move more speedily into Web3. They would not require significant changes to their core gameplay loop, and just as important, they would not require significant changes to their in-game economies to move into Web3. Those 3 large buckets are UGC games, social PvP, and MMOs. And we were very, very active and are super active in all 3. We used Solana's tech differentiation as a key driver in our pitch meetings for there. As Hakyeon and Cherin might have alluded to, Solana's blockchain protocol is made for highly scalable blockchain products. We definitely don't do a good job in marketing ourselves on the tech differentiation, but a few key metrics that I like to share is Solana today is processing more blockchain transactions than all other blockchains combined. We are battle tested at a level of scale that no other blockchain has achieved. And we are working with live service products that do multiple things today that, frankly speaking, would not work on any other blockchain protocol. We've also shipped recent things like compressed NFTs that are an absolute game changer for game designers, game developers, and game marketers. Compressed NFTs allow developers to ship high scale or high number of NFTs. For example, 100 million NFTs will cost about 50 SOL, which is about $1,500, let's say. And anywhere else would be in the cost of millions of dollars. What that does now is it removes any limitations on game design, on UGC games scaling into Web3. And now really unique Web3 paid UA marketing campaigns can happen because you can mint 100 million NFTs that are free to claim, that have a non-zero value, and you can use those to attract players into your game. So that's sort of the key strategic initiatives that we put in place to get to where we are today. Where we are today is we have over 150 games in development, many in the online multiplayer, social, and UGC categories, which we are very excited about. We had a sort of coming out party for our games ecosystem in early November. Solana Games Day was the primer event of Solana Breakpoint, which is our annual developer conference. And there we showcased 33 game studios with 40 pretty polished playables. We're doing another B2C games event in San Diego on July 18th and 19th. It is right before San Diego Comic-Con. We pulled Solana or blockchain out of it because, frankly, again, as I mentioned, the games need to stand as good games on their own before blockchain even gets experienced within the context of the game. So Play GG is happening July 18th and 19th, and we are very excited to showcase over 50 of our games. And that's where we are today. We are building toward what we call the play and own or play to own vision. And we are excited about the early data that our games ecosystem is demonstrating, and then building toward like things that are only possible on Solana today. So the games ecosystem and the size, the quantity and quality of our games ecosystem is industry leading. We have many live games today, and the live games are sharing sharing some data that are interesting. Meaning, I would say the key question in the blockchain games industry is there a Web3 native games business model that, i.e. revenue generating, that will help sustain and grow these Web3 game studios? And then is that Web3 games business model, Web3 native games business model, big enough to attract the EAs, the Activision Blizzards of the world, the Nintendos of the world into our space? Early data is indicating that in-game asset swaps show the potential to be a resounding yes to both those key questions. The good thing is in-game asset swaps sit nicely on top of current games business models. They do not replace in-app purchases or advertising revenue. They sit on top of it. And then thirdly is it is significantly revenue generation, and you can design for it. You can design your in-game economy toward in-game asset swaps. Most in-game asset swaps today are current play session progression incentivized, meaning I am playing right now, I want to advance, and I need an item. I will swap with you, rent with you, or just purchase the item for myself. And I think to have these things happen at scale, you need a scale-tested, battle-tested, performant blockchain. So that's where we are today on the games ecosystem. And then where we are building toward is also something that is truly only possible on Solana today. I mentioned the example of in-game asset swaps. Well, we think that in-game asset swaps to happen well and to happen like even deeper when cross-game asset swaps are a thing, that the games backend stack, or what we call online services, games online services, should be on chain. And naturally, all the games today focused on the inventory management layer, or basically ownership of digital items and collections. That was the right place to focus on. But if that is where blockchain's value in the games industry ends, then what are we all doing here, right? So what can continue to be on chain? Solana's games ecosystem is headed in the opposite direction of most games ecosystems of other blockchain protocols. The other blockchain protocols, mostly because of the tech limitations of those blockchain protocols, are moving to have more and more things off-chain, basically just becoming a game with an NFT collection connected by some crypto wallet. Barely a blockchain game. They call it Web 2.5 games. But that really is not what we're here building at Solana. What we are envisioning and giving voice to that vision is basically the entirety of the game's online services stack to be on chain, from user authentication, inventory management, user data, matchmaking, and analytics to be all on chain. There are elements of user authentication being on chain today, and we see this use case as sort of like a soul-bound token gamer profiled as a KYC layer that will help manage multiple game wallets, game NFT exchange wallet, NFT marketplace wallets. The wallets have been proliferated across games, marketplaces, and so forth. So they're an SBT KYC gamer profile. Also, it has some unique advantages where I think we've all experienced this as gamers. We drop into a new game and they ask for all this customization where you kind of wish they know your preferences and you can dive right in. I think a gamer profile soulbound token would manage a lot of that. The inventory management layer right now is in its early stage of, I guess, as I mentioned, really focused on driving the ownership of digital items and collections. Where we want to get to is to enable cross-game asset swaps as both a organic and sort of inorganic way to start user acquisition, but also to enable players to advance or speedily advance through progression. So, for example, when you have the online services stack on chain, player progression can become a tradable digital asset as well. So for another example would be if me and Hakyeon are playing two separate games. Let's say I'm playing Spider-Man and he's playing, I don't know, MapleStory, right? And I want to play MapleStory one weekend and he wants to play Spider-Man one weekend. But we are both dads and we're both busy. So I want to really get into the core and deep levels of the game without having to spend the 20 hours. That's sort of a very simplistic example of where we could swap progression, rent progression, and so forth. Now, there would need to be guardrails in place where the game designers feel comfort that the game will be experienced properly. But yeah, we think there's a big future in the entirety of the online services stack being on chain. And then for those who are not familiar with games online services, the key elements are user authentication, inventory management, user data matchmaking, and analytics. Matchmaking on chain has some very, very unique capabilities, but as you can imagine, to do so, you need a pretty performant blockchain that could basically handle a social network, which Solana is the only one today that can do that. And then when we have those online services stack fully on chain in the future, unique things like games paid UA on chain can happen. One of the native superpowers of smart contracts is eliminating unnecessary middlemen. And paid user acquisition today has a lot of unnecessary middlemen. And we think when we get to a near future where paid user acquisition on chain is possible in at least the context of blockchain games, then players themselves could receive a portion of the cost per install or customer acquisition cost to play a game. Why not, right? The fact that that does not happen today is essentially because there are too many unnecessary middlemen in paid UA today. So I think that's sort of where we are and what we're building toward. I mentioned some elements of in-game asset swaps and cross-game asset swaps, and I'll go a little deeper into that as our conclusion. So we have several games in the Solana games ecosystem doing in-game asset swaps, and a few that are doing in-game asset swaps at scale, with the developer sitting in the middle always taking a fee. When we have, let's say, 5 to 10 active games with somewhat significant player bases doing in-game asset swaps, what we plan to do is encourage the ecosystem toward cross-game asset swaps, using the games online services stack on chain to also, it's not only about in-game assets and ownership of items and collections, we think user data and progression data itself can be tradable, rentable data. Now, when I talk about users owning the user data, there's a lot of questions and sometimes developers jump the gun. I don't see ownership of user data as a zero-sum game, meaning because the user has benefits from that data does not mean the developer or the platform does not also have access and ownership and usership of that data. So that's kind of where we're going. And then when we get to the point of multiple games doing in-game asset swaps, a digital asset DEX focused on the games industry or specialized for the games ecosystem will probably be needed. Many current DEXs today could back into it, but they do need some integration to the online services stack where they can verify the item and collection. They could verify for sure the user data and progression data by the developer, and the developer also receive a fee for that. And then when cross-game asset swaps are a thing, progression data, like the example I gave for Hakyeon and myself, could also be tradable assets in game. So in our blog post of Play and Own, and that we outlined this vision, we go through new forms of utilization of ownership and what can be defined as a digital item, right? That will be valuable for players to trade, own, buy, sell. And so in summary, we see a vision, a plan and a strategic vision where ownership is much more goes well beyond just in-game items and collections. We view user data and progression data as valuable digital assets as well. And for that to happen cross-game and in-game, we are working toward the entirety of the game's online service stack to be on chain. And of course, to do that, in reality, our tech differentiation and tech lead at Solana is the only blockchain protocol today that could handle this vision. And so we are excited to ship games building toward this vision, work with game developers to understand and build this vision together. So we've done a lot of work on our partner engineering team. Our partner engineering team at Solana is one of the largest teams at Solana. Our marketing team that we've historically done a horrible job at marketing ourselves, but now that our games ecosystem is ready to launch many games, our marketing support is teeing up and so forth. So we have a lot of support systems in place for our developers. We have a big vision that we're building toward in the Solana games ecosystem. And I thank you again for the opportunity to share some of those learnings, what's going on today. And we hope to see you building in the Solana ecosystem one day. Thank you very much.